It's a trap!
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
This is the Team of Rivals podcast.
Everything you want to hear from the big sports to the big screen.
He's all by himself, fires into the end zone. Caught! Touchdown! No! Ball into the windup in his first offering. Just a bit outside. He tried the corner and missed.
He doesn't like you. I don't like you either.
Time winding down. Waino for three. Yes! She is gone!
I don't believe what I just saw!
Go crazy, folks! Go crazy!
You believe in miracles? Yes!
You may fire when ready.
What?
All right, everyone. Welcome back to this week's show. We're a little light tonight. We have Mr. Geddes. He is in the school. He's in the education system. So it's a parent-teacher night. They're probably doing all that stuff by Zoom calls, I imagine, or conference calls, whatever it is. We've all been doing it. We've all been living that way for several months now, so it's just kind of normal. I'm not alone, though. I do have Elliott with me tonight. Elliott is behind a green screen. We're getting this figured out. We're looking better. We just have to get Pete on board now, but... man, I tell you, starting all the way down to the World Series, we found out what happened there, and I'm sure we're going to get into that in a little bit, right? How nuts that all is. Baseball, a couple indications here early on that it's going to be a winter probably like we've never seen, as far as what teams normally do, how do they normally operate this time of year, and then ultimately, man, we're going to see, but the early indications are not good, Elliott.
Yeah, and the things that we've seen already have kind of been a little bit shocking. A couple of players did not have their options picked up, which I'm really super surprised on, especially with the Cardinals.
Yeah, and we can tear all that down in a minute. But so we've got a lot of stuff happening in baseball, a lot of worry, I think a lot of speculation. We really don't know what's going to happen. It's just completely unknown, and usually we can kind of predict what our teams are going to do, right? We know what they need.
Yeah.
We know what they probably want to get rid of, and this time around, how many teams do you see? Who was the guy that just got put on waivers? Brad Hand.
Yeah, Brad Hand.
I mean, you get somebody. Yeah, you get somebody like him who's one of the best relief pitchers out there in the game. You have Colt Wong, a Gold Glove second baseman. Yes, he's a little bit lighter on the bat. He had a decent year at the plate, but he brings so much in that up the middle defense. All the that premium. It's the premium way to be, right? Up the middle. If you've got premium defense, that's what teams aspire to. And
he's been one of the perennial middle guys.
Yeah.
In the National League for the last few years, and
right.
There's nobody. I mean, it's pretty much been Colton Wong and Javier Baez where those comparisons have been made because those two guys are the best.
Yeah, absolutely. So. I mean, and to see just a not picking up a $12.5 million option when in years prior that's been kind of a no-brainer, I think, for the most part, right? Look, I'm not saying we can just go right into the. No, I don't want to start there. I want to start on the proper timeline here, and I want to talk just briefly about what happened in the World Series, Game 7. And of course we learned more as time passed that the Dodgers might have had an indication as early as the second inning that Justin Turner had tested positive and still in until I believe the seventh inning.
Now I want to start before this because these guys have the tests ahead of time. Mm-hmm. Don't they need to be cleared before they go out into the field for the game, or are these guys getting their clears during the middle of the game? I mean, that seems a little irresponsible on MLB's part or the team's part about not having these guys cleared before they're going to be on the bench, scratching their balls, spitting in the dugout, all of that, where these guys are most susceptible to contracting the virus, because when they're in the dugout, I would say the coaches and the staff are wearing the masks. The players aren't. So the players are the ones that really need to be sure that they're cleared and that they don't have the virus. So the fact that they're saying that this happened in the second inning, that they found out in the second inning, is kind of ridiculous. And I don't know, if I'm Justin Turner's teammates, I'm kind of like, what the hell, man?
Well, yeah, I'm going to get into my thoughts on that in a second. So you've got Kim Smith coming in hot tonight, stating, just going to say it now, I'm super pissed at the Cardinals organization. They're getting rid of the wrong ones. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're going to get into that here in a little bit, and I understand. Trust me, I understand. I'm feeling it too. CJ's on. How you doing, man? So, yeah, going back to that, you know, I get it. It looks really strange. Somebody's taken out of a game because they tested positive. There's all these rules around the pandemic, even in their baseball rules. First of all, there are rules, and then there are baseball rules, right? And right. To look and see him out celebrating at the end of the after the final outs and without a mask on and taking pictures. And now he didn't take the team flight back, and as far as we know, none of them have tested positive. But it could take days before that shows up.
Right.
But you know, you think about it, Elliott, and like the guys out there, I mean, they've been playing the night before and the day before that. You know, it's like they've been around each other so much. They've been in that locker room. They've been in the dugout. They were there pregame. He was playing in the early innings. It's like, okay, so he's back out there again after the night. Like, what? In my opinion, now look, I know that the more time you're exposed to someone who's positive, the better your chances are that you're going to catch it. I get it, but still, they've been in this bubble together for a couple weeks now, and
that's the thing. They've been in the bubble. How the hell did he get it?
I think Manfred gave it to him, to be honest with you. But you know, I understand it's bad optics, but you know, I get just the human side of this just for a second. And I know this thing is serious, and people have lost people, so I'm not taking this lightly at all. But you know, look, how hard is it for a player like that? You finally make it. That's likely to be his last game in a Dodgers uniform. How hard would that have been to just to isolate yourself immediately? You just won the World Series. You can't even, you know, how do you do that, right?
Yeah,
when you've just been playing with them hours before.
Guys, I'm gonna go back to my hotel room by myself and hang out. You guys have fun.
Next time I see you,
I understand that.
Next time I see some of you guys is probably when I'm playing you. Or maybe a visit to wherever to celebrate in a couple months. But I mean, that would be a strange situation to be in. Now, whatever happened. I don't care. I care, and then at the same time, I don't care, because these guys have been so exposed to each other anyway. I don't know if it whatever. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I'm not a doctor, so I'll just shut up. But yeah, just what a strange way to end a very strange baseball season for sure. Now,
I agree.
You know, the Dodgers finally win one, and I guess the weird thing about this one is we've got a bunch of new faces on tonight. We got hey, look at that, Mike Nuttall's on. How you doing? I think he'd be up this late, man. He's partying. He's my dad, just living on the edge, being up at 9 o'clock. We got Corey, Laura, Tammy. So we got a bunch of new faces on here tonight. Welcome everyone. You know, how strange is it that the Dodgers, they've been there so much. They've had such a great run. They're not done with this run, by the way. No. When you acquire a player like Mookie Betts, and I know it takes more than one player, but when you pick up a guy like that, their run's not over. But now that they finally made it, of course they would finally make it in a year when hardly any fans could be in the stands, and it's a shortened season. Who knows how fans in the industry and players are going to look back on the 2020 playoff run and how much they're going to value that. So I don't know. It's just you finally get there, and you're in this year of all years.
I would have to imagine if the Dodgers make it again next year, any Clayton Kershaw start will have no fans, because that seems to be the only way that he can perform.
Well, they had they were scattered, right, in Arlington, so they did have some fans there, which actually was nice to see. And I felt, and I'm sure people from Tampa don't appreciate this, but I felt that, hey, Tampa Bay should be right at home with this amount of fans in the stands. They've got the home field advantage with having 20% of the stadium filled. And so I'll show myself out. That was a bad joke, but isn't that? I've been to a game in Tampa, man. I don't know if you've been there or not.
I've never been to Tampa.
Yeah. So when you can hear the umpire calling balls and strikes from the upper deck behind home plate, you might have an attendance problem.
Oh, geez.
Just saying.
Yeah.
They were playing the Red Sox too, so it's not like they were
ridiculous.
playing a really bad Baltimore team or they were playing a Toronto. They were playing the Red Sox when the Red Sox were still pretty damn good. And it was you know, I think I've been in perhaps I don't know, a funeral or two that have been a little bit more fun than that game was. And that was the night before Sarah and I got married. So we happened to be down in Tampa, St. Pete.
Nice.
Okay, so the Dodgers take
my
this.
My video cut out, and it's kind of weird. I'm going to refresh. I will be right back.
Okay,
It's
sure.
really weird right
I've
now.
got it. I've got it. Don't worry. Hopefully I don't have to set his camera up again. I don't know what Elliott's deal is. He did bring the green screen tonight, so I'm going to give him some credit for that. So we're going to talk a little bit about, we're not going to stick too much on the World Series and the playoffs, but I do want to get into some of the things that, you know, we've heard baseball talk about as far as the commissioner about, you know, possibly keeping this playoff format going forward. So when Elliott gets back on here, I do want to discuss that a bit more as well. There he is. He's back. Sorry, I had to click a few buttons here.
Okay, that was
I don't see you in the feed, but hey, we're gonna work through it. Yeah, you're not there. You're a big question mark, buddy.
Hey, that's all right.
I'm going to Elliott. What I wanted to talk about here briefly, and we're gonna have to, unfortunately, we'll just have to pause here real quick. So I'm gonna have to add you. I'll add you back on here.
Okay.
And you're not gonna have your green screen. Sorry, buddy. I can't.
That's all right.
I can only do so much. I can only do so much, and
it wouldn't be
it wouldn't be one of our shows if we didn't have
stuff going on.
Exactly. If we didn't have stuff like this to deal with, it just wouldn't be us. So let me get you fixed here. Not fixed.
Yeah, my total screen went
black.
There we go.
So hey, that's all right.
Yep.
At least everybody doesn't have to look at my basement.
Yeah, we don't want to look at that anymore. Let me take your echo out. Okay, we're good to go. We're rolling again. So what I wanted to talk about, Elliott, was Bob Manfred has come kind of out stating that he would like this expanded playoff format to continue. He would like to continue this runner starting out on second base once we reach about the 11th inning. Okay, I don't know. I want to get your thoughts on this because I'm pretty sure I don't like that. I don't know if I have a good basis for it, but just I think to start off with, what do you think of the expanded playoffs? What did you think about them this year and an odd year? How do you feel about that potentially as something that's a go forward for them?
I thought it was kind of weird. I thought it was kind of weird, and maybe I'm feeling this way because we had all these NL Central teams that made the playoffs and then all lost. And it was just kind of really sucked the wind out of my fandom for watching the playoff games. I kind of want to see it go back because I felt that the end of the year push is a lot more exciting when there's less teams able to make it. And I feel like it feels more important than just, hey, we're in, they're in. So, and then we go to these 3-game playoffs. So I'd like to see it go back. As for the extra inning stuff, it's kind of whatever. I know that it saves the bull.
Isn't the proposal though not to go back to 16, right? It's to do. I believe I might have this wrong, but what I think I remember is it would be 14, where the team with the best record doesn't have to go through that wild card series, and they shouldn't have to, right? There's no reason why the Dodgers should have had to play that, but they did. I mean, they handled Milwaukee, but I think all of us were a little concerned about how that would work out. When you have a first seed and an 8th seed taken out, anything can happen in a short series, and it's very likely that that you would have seen. I'm surprised we didn't see a little bit more of that, but I do like the fact that I for this year I was fine with it, and I said, I'm going to let this year play out, and I'll think about it on the way forward. The only problem with doing it with that many teams is, well, it's both good and bad, right? Because then you have you have normally in our normal world, what became our normal world with the second wild card is we had 10 teams, right? So, you kind of knew by July 31st whether you were in or out. The problem is expanding it now. You've got more teams that are not willing to deal. Maybe they're willing to hold on to what they have because they think they got that playoff run in them because they can make it. Good for more cities in baseball, more regions in baseball. Bad when it comes to things like buyers and sellers really determining what you are by July 31st. It is going to make that more difficult. We've already seen the second wild card come into play there over the last several years where that has had an impact. And I think that if you open it up to 7 teams in each league, you're going to continue. The problem's going to be just a little bit worse, right? So for those reasons, I think I would prefer to see the playoffs go back to where we had them. I think that was working really good. Now, look, I am in an age bracket now where you can consider me a little bit older as a fan, and maybe some of the newer fans or some of the fans that were, not following it like you and I do, Elliott, but maybe it appeals to other people, and maybe in the long term, it's actually a better thing. I'm unsure right now. When I'm unsure, I stay with what I know, and I like the old format.
Yeah, I'd like to see the numbers on the ratings for the playoffs, and if it did expand it, and maybe it did a little bit because there were other teams in the playoffs that you wouldn't see normally in a regular postseason run, like the Padres and some other teams. But
yeah, you said it.
Yeah, but it'd be interesting to see it. What it would have been during a regular season. So say we were a normal 162 game season and they expanded the playoffs this year just as a test run. You don't know though. So
yeah. So I want to acknowledge some of the new people on here. We have some people commenting. Tammy says, I hate the extra inning stuff. We have Emily. Emily's watching with us. Thank you for tuning in, Emily. And we have Timothy. So we've got some new names on here tonight, Elliott. Maybe he was just not having Pete.
It's possible.
Yeah, I think Pete's non-presence tonight has brought some new fans into. We probably should have got rid of him a long time ago, I think, or maybe we just make him an occasional event on here instead of a regular. What do you think? I don't know. We'll talk about it offline, and we'd like you guys to chime in on it too. You guys who've watched this over the years, should we consider limiting Pete's time on here so we can get all these new? You can tell your friends that there's only one Cub fan, one Cardinal fan. Of course, the Cubs fans are confusing as shit because he's wearing a San Diego hat. He's doing that to piss me off.
That's true.
And that's okay. So the other thing is the base runner starting out on second. I really like that. What was it, 2 or 3 years ago in the World Baseball Classic? I actually thought it worked pretty good. And for the World Baseball Classic, it's perfectly fine with it, man, because those guys are supposed to be in spring training. You don't want anybody getting hurt. And so getting those games out of the way and getting them done, and I was all on board. And this year, I can kind of understand why they wanted to go that route as well. But I will say this. I didn't like it this year. I didn't like it in a day and age, Elliott, where the league doesn't know how to bunt anymore, save for a handful of guys.
No, I mean, a lot of these games should have been over right away, but they weren't because it's either somebody's walked or somebody's striking out. Nobody's pushing anybody over. There was a handful of games, maybe, where these teams that knew how to execute it could do it. Namely, I think the Braves executed it quite a few times, if I remember correctly. But most teams, nobody either knows how to bunt or wants to bunt.
Yeah, not knowing how to bunt, I think I would definitely throw that shade their way. I saw it happen to the Cardinals this year. There's a couple guys that tried to, that you could tell had not done this for a while and couldn't execute it.
And here's the crazy thing. Since we had the DH this year, some of the best bunters weren't even hitting at all.
Logan is on. That's another new name, Elliott. My goodness. We've got all these new faces on here tonight. Maybe I accidentally saved this with a group that I normally don't. I don't know. I try to go through that as quick as I can when we start, but
did we accidentally throw $10 on there for Facebook?
Jesus Christ. For those of you that have anybody out there that actually has a Facebook page that's just not your own personal one, the stuff you get, the notifications you get, Elliott, you see them too.
Yep.
Just
you're getting noticed.
every day.
Give it $10 and you'll get more noticed.
This post is doing 300% better than your other ones. For $10 more, you can reach another 13 people.
Right.
Which is probably what it ends up being. But so yeah, I'm not a fan of starting the runner out. I don't want to see that continue. Now, the big question out there that I think as we progress through the off season here, we'll get it answered. Is a DH going to be back? I think in 21. And I think they need to get that answered really, really quick, Elliott, because these teams have to make a plan going into the offseason. And how much different is that for a National League team, knowing or not knowing whether you're going to have a DH the next season?
Some of their acquisitions and some of their money is, for some of these teams, is going to have to go towards a proper DH. And if they're waiting until spring training, a lot of these teams are already going to be set. So they're going to be sending out spring training invites to the possibility of some guys making the team just to be a DH, and that's not fair to these National League teams.
Yeah, no, it does put them at a disadvantage, and there's maybe a move or two the Cardinals don't make exactly the same way that they did last year, knowing that the DH was going to be there. So I don't know, but they need to get that answered quick because that's going to alter a lot of plans. And you would think that the players' union would be all over this, Elliott. There's 15 more jobs. So now, regardless of what we think about the DH, I always believed once it got here, it wasn't going away. And I think we're going to see it. I don't know how you all feel about the DH. I know some people hate it. Some people are indifferent. Very, very few people, unless you're an American leaguer, love it, right? So I think it's going to be here. I'm assuming that. And look, I'm okay with it. I just want them to get that question answered so these teams can make a plan. Because, gosh, I can't imagine just not having that revealed to you in February. And you've had months where you could have figured out who's going to fill that spot or which guys are going to combo up and fill that spot. You lose a lot of time there. So they've got to get that one settled. But, I don't think all of these proposals are terrible. There might be some merit to them. And I'll go back to what I've said a billion times on here and other shows that I've done. Every time one of these big changes are made, we do kind of forget about it in a few years, and it becomes normal to us, and it feels the same. So regardless of whether you were just vehemently against the DH or not, once it's here, I bet in a few years you're not going to notice it anymore. It's just going to be it's going to feel like the baseball you've always watched. And so I'm over it, to be honest. I mean, if I had in a perfect world, I think most of us that have followed the National League our entire lives would like to see it stay the way it was because I like the strategy behind it. But then again, it's what's that expression go? I don't really feel like pissing up a flagpole on this one. I'll pick a different battle if DH is here. All right, so
for the extra innings, I kind of have this question because it reminds me. This idea reminds me of how college football is. Would you like to see maybe wait 2 innings before you start putting a man on second to see if you could have a couple of regular extra innings, and then after that, then you start putting a guy on second to try and move the game along?
I like that better than what we did this year, right? And I understood why it happened this year. I mean, Christ, we could have had, you could have, this year, Elliott, they could have enacted a rule where everybody has to play with their opposite hand in the last inning to score. I mean, and we would have been okay with it just because we had the sport back. I like that idea better than what we did this year. But to me, if they're going to get a 162 game season in, and I know they're not going to know that for a while, if they're going to get a full season in, I don't think it should be there at all. That I would just, that extra runner. Now if they know they're going to have to shorten up the season next year, then sure. I mean, bring it back. Maybe you do wait to the 11th inning though, before you do that. So I'd be okay in that scenario, but if we're looking at a normal schedule, hopefully, I hope they just go back to regular extra innings.
Yeah.
Okay. Tony La Russa is back in the dugout. I am, and a lot of the young South Siders there don't seem very happy about it. How short our memory is, and too bad for a guy like Rick Renteria, who's probably not a bad guy. He gets let go of both Chicago teams right before they're about to break through, right? Happened with the Cubs where they were right there, and you could see it at the end of 2014. They were coming. Get out of here. we're gonna replace you with this guy who's made lemonade out of lemons down in Tampa for years. We're gonna go this route because we're ready to win now. Chicago White Sox, same thing. You saw a really good club this year, made the playoffs finally, and hey, Rick, thanks for doing the heavy lifting here. We're gonna call in, we're gonna call in someone else to take us to the finish line. Thank you for your contributions. But seeing Tony La Russa back in the dugout, he's kind of coming full circle, right? Because I believe he got his managerial start with the White Sox back in the 80s. Yeah. And so it's probably maybe a little bit nostalgia for him. Maybe they're coming from a genuine place. We're like, you know what? We kind of need a guy like this. Look what he did in St. Louis with some of the younger teams. And he cultivated and helped develop this core of players. Very, very good about, well, I can't say very good. There were some instances where Tony and rookies sometimes didn't. They're kind of like oil and water. But maybe that is what this young White Sox team needs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of conflicted on it. I mean, for all the years him being in St. Louis, I know the type of coach he is, and I know that he can get the best out of his players. But I also know with a young team and the conflicts that he's had with it, and the sense of having the no fun league inside the dugout of a team with Tim Anderson on it, who is king, let's have fun and flip the bat as high and as hard as we can. Yeah. Where I feel like there's going to be some headbutting with some of these guys in the dugout. I mean,
kind of like this attitude where, oh, Tony's coming in, everybody sit up straight.
Right. Exactly. And I don't know if that's going to transition well with the White Sox.
We'll see. I think he'll come with a lot of. He's obviously going to come with a lot of credibility already, kind of baked in, right? He's going to come with I don't know. You raise an interesting point. Very young team, a lot of energy, some showmanship there, a lot of passion.
Yes.
Typically, you look over the years at Tony's teams. There's always maybe one or two of those guys that would float in and out of there that were kind of like that. Julian Tavares is one that comes to mind where he was a little more flamboyant than what you would typically see. And by the way, I loved his time as a Cardinal. I thought he was just a personality, right? It reminds me a lot of what Jose Martinez was in the Cardinals dugout. And so I like that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's not something that's synonymous with the Tony La Russa dugout. So it'll be interesting to see how it happens. Me personally, I would have loved to have seen him go out on top. I didn't always agree with the things that Tony did. I thought maybe sometimes he overmanaged, but his body of work, you can't deny it. He's a Hall of Fame manager. No way to argue against it. I would have liked to, if the selfish side of me says, boy, I'd really like to see that guy go out on top like he did. Like he went out on top. He retired after 2011. He came back and managed the All-Star game the next year, won that game. And for me, right, I would just like to see it be over right there. He's 72 years old. He was kind of working in the front offices, working with baseball. But you know, if this is if he's got the itch to get back in the dugout, why not finish where you started?
Yeah, I mean, and I saw kind of some of the Sox Twitter go off and some of the Chicago media, and a lot of people are kind of like, "What? Like, what are we doing here?" And I know that there's some front office turmoil. From the looks of everything, this is a Jerry Reinsdorf hire, and not some of the, not a lot of his staff is really excited about this. So I'm interested in how Cardinals Twitter reacted to this.
Actually, from what I had seen, and even out there on Facebook, which Facebook's a little bit harder for me to watch or to check in on sometimes because I don't know, it's an unhappy place these days, and I certainly understand why. I'm not the happiest either because we're facing a reality. We touched on it a little bit that we don't quite know what this offseason is gonna hold for the Cardinals.
Right.
So. Yeah, let's just go into that because it was going to be kind of my next segue here. So the Cardinals have already started making some moves, and if this is any indication of what's going to happen this offseason, it doesn't give me a lot of high hope or optimism that we're going to see big changes, the ones that we really know we need, and that is a substantial improvement to the offense. They've won the last 2 years based on run prevention. That's defense and that's pitching. Both have taken a hit. When you remove a Gold Glover from your defense,
it hurts.
It's going to hurt. Right now, look, how this might play out is, and a lot of people are speculating that Tommy Edman is just going to be your second baseman. Now he's a solid defender. He played very good when he was at third base. I think he's had a limited amount of games at second. I think you could plug him in there. Is he going to be as good as Colton Wong? No. Is he going to be as flashy as Colton Wong? No, he's not. Is he going to be an average to a slightly above average defender? I think so. Right? So what you might lose in a few defensive runs saved, you are getting a better guy at the plate. I will say that. I do like Tommy Edman. I like his bat in that lineup in play. If I had to pick between the two, I would be going Edman with the bat. I don't think Colton Wong ever arrived there where we thought he could have as far as an offensive player. Right. But regardless, that was one of the few options the Cardinals had going into this offseason to get some flexibility within their payroll, was to not pick up that option. And so, look, I don't know what that move necessarily telegraphs, but if you can't retain a Gold Glove, core piece of your lineup over the last 4 or 5 years, it might send a signal that, the lack of revenue at the gate probably hurts the Cardinals more than it does some other big market clubs. So
yeah, that's worrisome, especially with a mid-market team where a lot, especially the Cardinals, where you're selling out every single home game and you've got 46,000 fans there. Not just the tickets, but the food, the beer, all of it, your raffles, everything. And you saw none of that this year. And with those mid-market teams like Milwaukee, like St. Louis, it probably does not bode well for bringing in players this year.
I gotta say hi to Leon Groover. I see him watching on here. He is a radio guy back in my hometown, and I'm sure he called plenty of strikeouts on my part when I was in high school. And I'm not talking strikeouts as a pitcher, Elliott. I'm probably talking strikeouts as a first baseman. So troubling sign. They had a press conference yesterday. You kind of heard the same thing. Revenue's down, payroll's likely to go down in kind, and so I don't think anybody holding out hopes this year that they're gonna sideswipe everybody, and take the other teams out at the knees by pulling off some blockbuster deal to take on Nolan Arenado's contract. I think you're fooling yourself if you think something like that's going to happen. There's no way in hell that's going to happen this year. So Cardinal fans, I hate to tell it to you, but my feeling is what you're looking at is kind of what we're going to get. Now what we're going to get is an infield now shifting. You've got, what I feel, unless they feel Max Schrock could potentially be ready at second base, I think you're looking at Tommy Edman there a majority of the time. Paul Goldschmidt, yes. Paul Goldschmidt will be our first baseman, obviously. Paul DeYoung is where I was going originally, is going to be our shortstop, and that leaves the question over there to third base. We knew we needed an upgrade. Who do you think is going to be our third baseman? Because it looks right now we've already got one there, and he's on the hook. We're on the hook to pay him $18.5 million in 2021, and that would be Matt Carpenter.
Salsa back at third.
And look. I've beat a dead horse too many times about that contract extension. In fact, everybody who has access to a microphone has talked about how bad this extension is playing out. So I don't need to do that. But I'll say the scary part is this. It's unlikely to happen, but who knows, right? He has a vesting option potentially for 2022, but he has to get enough plate appearances in. And so if you look at 2020 and 2021 together, he needed to reach 1,100 plate appearances. And then it does state that in 2021, he has to have 550. Now, obviously, 2020 was prorated down, right? They only played 60 games. And so he had 169 plate appearances, and it ended up being like 470-some. I don't remember the math. Thank you, Jeff Jones from Twitter, for helping me understand this. Prorated is projecting out that 60 games, not paring it back from 162 to 60 games. I had it backwards originally. I'm like, oh my God, he only needs 584 plate appearances, and that vesting option kicks in. I was wrong. I was calculating it the wrong way. He needs around 600 and I want to say 30-some plate appearances. He averaged more than that from 2013 to 2019. But I don't think there's a scenario where they let him get that many plate appearances.
I hope not.
Yeah, because you're looking at the 2 years. He fell a little bit short this year. So he's got to make that up. Plus, he's got to get past 550, and then he has to get to that. He has to make that gap up in order for that vesting option to kick in. I just don't see a scenario where they consciously let that happen, because I believe it's another $18.5 million for 2022, and so that's all but a sure thing that he's not going to reach that number. But damn, that's a scary thought. Like, what if you had a catastrophic injuries and you had no choice? Crazier things have happened, and thank God 2021 isn't the same number as 2020, or I might believe it, right? So, look, I don't think there's going to be a lot of action. They've retained their whole coaching staff. Jeff Albert, the hitting coach, is back. So I think we need to expect more of the same, and unfortunately, we got to go into 2021 crossing our fingers and hoping some of these guys improve on their own. Obviously, the other big elephant in the room is going to be what's going to happen with Yadi Molina. He's a free agent for the first time in his career. Adam Wainwright is right now too, currently. So we've got some question marks.
Same. I'm kind of worried about. I mean, even though the Cubs are a big market team, in Chicago, their pocketbook has been moths for the last couple of years. I mean, everybody knows it. That they've been really unwilling to kind of spend any kind of money. And Anthony Rizzo has an option this year for $16.5 million with a $2 million buyout. I mean, I could totally see the Cubs spending the $2 million rather than giving him the option, but just to save money and bring somebody else in, and that kind of worries me. I mean, I feel like after the performance this year, that they would the front office would take the opportunity to kind of start moving some pieces.
An uncomfortable risk to make, because if he has another year like this one, you're not getting anything for him anyway, right?
Right.
So our old buddies on here, Chris Lawless is watching with us, and he tells me that #BenchCarp or #TradeCarp has been trending on Cardinals Nation 24/7 for a couple of years now. He's right. He's right. Yeah. He's right, because that group there is probably the most guilty one that I see on my feed of just the that group reacts faster than some of the other ones. If that tells you how much that group is active. I don't even have to watch the news.
A 2-week span where it's like, oh yay, and when he's hitting the home runs every single game, and then it's back to #TradeCarp.
Yeah, well, I don't think anything's been positive on that front for a long time. So, we talked about it last week a little bit about Yadi potentially playing somewhere else, right? And I think more than ever, I'm kind of like looking at this going, well,
do you think he'd rather retire than be traded, or?
Well, he can't be traded. He's a free agent, right? So
or picked up by another team. I mean, if they don't come to
an
agreement,
I believe the guy. I believe he would want to play bad enough, or I think he's going to play, Elliott. I don't think he's ready to retire yet. I think he's got a little bit left in the tank, a little bit left in the basement, whatever you want to call it. And he's a proud guy, and he wants to prove he can still do it. And he's still got the competitive fire. So I believe he'll do something. And I believe wherever he ends up.
Hell, the Cubs like to take the Cardinals at the end of their careers, like Jim Edmonds. Hey, why don't you bring him over to the Cubs and have him, work with Willie for a year or two, and then send him
I don't
back
see that happening.
I don't either.
There was there's some talk about, gosh, would he end up in Chicago now that Tony's back managing, and would Wainwright go with him there? I think pretty sure they have Monty Grandal, so I don't know if that's a likely scenario.
No.
But yeah, it's a real question in my mind. I thought it was no doubt, right? Like they're gonna bring him back. They're gonna ask him to play a little bit less so the other kid can get his opportunity. Don't know if he's ready to do that or not, right? And so for the first time in my mind, I'm like, boy, it really is a big question. Is he going to be back or not?
I think that's a conversation that he's probably going to be having with other teams, where they're going to be like, are you willing to not play as many games and to help, if they've got a young catcher, to help the catching team, or to work with the pitchers, bring your experience in, because that's what we want from you. Is we want your experience. We want your leadership in the dugout, because he's got that in spades. So and any team would be super lucky to have him if he is willing to take on that role.
Yeah,
we'll threw up in my mouth a little bit saying that, but
Chris also says Yadi, Waino, Ozuna going to the White Sox play for Tony. I wouldn't look. Stranger things have happened. There was an Instagram exchange between Ozuna, the Big Bear, and Yadi about getting together to play again. I don't see that scenario happening in St. Louis if they chose to not pick up an option, a $12.5 million option on a Gold Glove second baseman. I don't see them bringing Marcell Ozuna back on a multi-year deal at all. Not after they let him walk. So it won't be in St. Louis. Kris could be right. It could be in Chicago. It could go for one more trip down memory lane with their old skipper and try to see if they can help that young team. And that's the thing you got to think about, though. Bringing veterans in like this that have been through the playoff rigors, that have had a couple titles. Hey, look, does that have an impact on a young team, bringing some veterans in like that? It could. I mean, right?
No,
in theory, like, it could be a good thing.
I mean, look what they did with the Cubs. Bringing in John Lester, bringing in
John Lackey,
David Ross, bringing in Ben Zobrist. These guys who have been there, have done it.
Absolutely.
Know what it's like to be a leader. I mean, maybe that's the thing that's missing from that young White Sox team. I know they have some good players, but they don't have players who have been through that long grind of the playoffs to the World Series. And maybe that's kind of what they need. They need somebody to come in and say, this is the expectations that you're going to have to make this kind of run.
I don't really know what's left to talk about in baseball, because all there is this anxiety on two levels, right?
Yeah.
What is this free agency market? What is the trade market? What is everything going to look like now? How many guys that under normal circumstances would definitely have jobs next year are not going to in this environment? How many of those middle tier veterans that are going to want a $6, $8, $9 million, 2-year deal? There's not going to get those right now, and you're going to wonder how many guys are just going to kind of be out. Their careers are going to be cut short, or they're going to hit a significant speed bump. You got to think about the minor leagues too.
Absolutely.
A lot of guys lost a year of development last year. Hell, a lot of them were just outright released. Like hundreds, thousands of minor leaguers were just let go. What's going to happen to their future? What's going to happen to the minor league system when it eventually returns, Elliott? They already talked about reducing it down by like 42 teams, I think. And
what's that going to do to the talent that we're going to see on the field in professional baseball?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a scary thing, and it makes you wonder too how much other markets might start opening up, like Japan, like Korea, where you start seeing more of those players from Asia. The doors opening up because of the system over here has experienced a significant setback. So it could.
I've seen a lot of talk about some international signings because those guys continued to play because they were able to
control it better.
Yes, absolutely. So, and another thing that we may see is you may see a lot of smaller deals that these guys might have to settle on if they want to continue to play baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I'm going to put a cap in the baseball conversation tonight, and this is where all of our baseball viewers that are still hanging out are probably going to leave us. In a time where baseball has now expired, we're watching the worst 5-2 Bears team I've ever seen. So I don't really have anything to look forward to on the football front. Hockey is over for now. So you look at this and you're like, whoa, what a depressing time. We get to watch a shit show next week in the election, and that's probably going to stretch on for the whole week because of ballot counting, and it's going to take time.
You know what? The new Xbox comes out. I am not turning on any news that evening. I'm going to lock myself in the other room, and I'm going to play with my new toy next Tuesday night.
Well, good for you. I don't get those kinds of toys because I have this problem called time. I don't have time to do anything like that anymore. But hopefully we're back next week if the country's not in a civil war. I certainly hope not. But we should be back on next week. But the one thing we are looking forward to, and if you've been watching it, if you followed our show, you know that we have another passion amongst the three of us, even the missing one tonight, and that is we are huge fans of the Star Wars franchise. Almost anything and all things Star Wars, with the exception of the Resistance animated series, was shit. But in the Last Jedi Last Jedi doesn't belong either. But Mandalorian season 2 kicks off tomorrow, and the timing of doing that, Elliott, when now throughout Hollywood and entertainment so much focus is on the streaming platform because of what has happened to the movie theaters, the big companies,
Absolutely.
right? Like Regal and AMC.
It's scary to think that it may be fewer and farther between to be able to get into a movie theater with the way that they're shutting down, unfortunately.
Right. And even if they're fully open, I don't think you're going to see packed houses for a while. And by the way, just boomeranging back to baseball real quick, even if those stadiums are open, don't be surprised when you're used to seeing stands full all the way up to the upper decks during a Tuesday night in St. Louis. And all of a sudden you look up and go, shit, there's a lot of open seats here, because even though we're 100% open again, I think you're going to see an impact. It's going to be a lingering effect with who's willing to gather like that going forward. But anyway, so movie theaters, yes, it's a bummer, right? There's nothing like going out with a crowd and being able to experience those types of things with a group of people that love it too. The home thing might not be so bad. My wife and I have rented several things that were home releases because they couldn't get those pictures out in the theaters because they were closed down. But The Mandalorian, when it launched at a really, gosh, I mean, how lucky was that timing given what we've experienced this year, that they got that out on that brand new platform of Disney Plus, took off, won tons of Emmys, and it's just really, when did it end? It ended somewhere in December last year. I think the final episode played, or maybe even into January. But it feels like forever. But it's back tomorrow, the Mandalorian season 2, man. And I know that the kids and I will probably be watching that tomorrow if I can. I wish there's a way to watch it live with my older one, because I would love to do that too. But I'm looking forward to it, man. And we talked about it on here before about what we think is going to happen. And there's one interesting thing I want to bring up too. But how are you going to be absorbing this one tomorrow? Are you one of those guys that's going to be up after midnight tonight to watch it, or are you going to be up early tomorrow?
No. So I work tomorrow. I'm not going to watch it tonight. When I get off work, I'm going to come home. My wife, my mom and dad, and my brother will all be at the house. Yeah. And we will all watch it together when I get home about 9:00 tomorrow night. So I'm going to try to avoid spoilers. Yeah. So, because it's weird. My mom and my brother, not really Star Wars people, but they got into it last year because my dad and I and my wife are, big Star Wars people. And so
we're down to 3 viewers. We were at 11 just a few minutes ago, and we start talking about non-baseball topic, man, and gone. They're all gone.
They're all gone.
That's fine. So for us here, I think I'd mentioned this a few weeks ago. I got a 120-inch projection screen. That's kind of a pop-up thing. You can take it down and you can put it back up. And I got a projector. So I think tomorrow, I've already got the screen out. In fact, that's serving as my backdrop right now with the green screen over it. It's all ready to go. So I think how we did this last year, because we were in a normal world at that point where I had to get up early on a Friday and you had to go to work. Kids had to go to school. I woke the boys up. I just barked up the stairs that the new Star Wars thing is on Disney Plus, and they came right down. We watched it together, and then we just got ready for our day. Probably watched it again that night after they got home. But tomorrow morning, the older one knows now that it's on tomorrow, and so he'd probably be up early. I've got this all set up, so we'll probably be out here in the garage / podcasting studio, and we'll definitely be watching it out here. But it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. They already said it's going to be 56 minutes long.
That's
this
way
episode.
Better. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, which when I saw the time on that, I was like, God, that's like 10 minutes longer than any of the episodes from last season. So that's exciting.
I saw something earlier tonight. We kind of finished in this area. There's a couple of YouTubers out there that are pretty interesting, and actually, my son is the one who recommended that I follow a couple of these guys. Star Wars Theory is what he goes by. Okay. He had a guy that was on from the Den of Nerds, and I'm sorry, I just don't remember their names. But they were talking about, Star Wars Explained and Den of Nerds. These two guys were talking about who was that person that it was episode 5 called the Gunslinger, the bounty hunter Fennec Shen, Fennec, something like that. Whatever. I probably screwed the name up, but body was laying in the desert, and this figure approached, and you only saw it from like the calves down, and you heard this kind of this radio-y sound, almost like a scanner or not a radar, but you heard this very specific sound, and you only heard it once before in Star Wars, and I couldn't put a finger on it. They pointed out today that when that figure approached her laying on the ground, you heard this sound, kind of this radio-ish sound in the background. The only other place you ever heard that was in A New Hope Special Edition when Jabba was waiting outside of Han Solo's ship in Docking Bay 94. When the camera shows Boba Fett walking in front of the camera at the end of that scene, you hear that exact same sound.
Okay.
Which is interesting. Now, there's a twist to this, because we've heard Tim Morrison is back, and he's going to be in season 2, and so there's a lot of things. He could be a clone. He could be an older Boba Fett. I mean, it works out either way. But I will say this, a piece of Star Wars canon that was actually in novels. Post Return of the Jedi, there was a series called not Shattered Empire. It was, I think it was called Shattered Empire.
Yeah.
I read the books.
Right.
There was one interlude scene in there that talked about Cobb Vanth, who is kind of a sheriff in a town on Tatooine. What was it called? Freedomville or something like that. I can't remember the damn name of it now. But he acquired armor that was recovered by Jawas out in the desert that was damaged.
Right.
Presumably, this is Boba Fett's armor that
was excreted by the Sarlacc.
Or he blew up the Sarlacc from the inside out, and then the armor was junk at that point. But so the speculation is it's that guy in that armor, or possibly Boba Fett in that armor. But from what we know from canon, that guy has it now. But you still hear that sound that ties you back to that one scene in A New Hope Special Edition. And they're absolutely right. They played it back to back, and like, shit, that is where I heard that before, and I couldn't put a finger on it.
And this is a podcast?
No, it's YouTubers.
YouTube. I'm gonna have to go
to
find
Star.
I
think if you search Star Wars Explained, you'll find it. And it's two different YouTubers. One is from one called the Den of Nerds, and they just got together on something that's kind of supposed to be a funny thing.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, and but they brought that up, and I'm like, oh man, that's one of them is arguing that Boba Fett's definitely in it, and the other argues kind of arguing it's not. So. Okay. Anyways, an interesting observation made by one of those two. And I'm sure there's other people that have nothing but time on their hands that probably knew that too. But didn't put a YouTube video together to show us. But it's an interesting thing. And I know we talked about it on here before. Me personally, I don't know if I want to see Boba Fett back at all. Right? I kind of like that mystery.
I kind of don't. I would rather see Rex.
Yeah, same here. Or hell, make it any other clone that we might have been familiar with in the Clone Wars, right? I'd be totally fine if they left it there, like an older Rex. Yeah, I would love to see Rex in live action. It'd be awesome because we know that the rumors are we're going to see Ahsoka. Right. That one scene that showed that figure in the hooded cloak, we're assuming, most of us are assuming that's Sabine Wren in live action. Why isn't the potential for Rex to show up? Gray beard and everything would be pretty good. I'd love that.
Fantastic.
All right, man. I think that'll do it for us tonight. When you're not watching us live on here, you can check us out on Amazon now. Amazon Podcast. You go to Amazon Music, you can search Team Arrivals Podcast. It will pop up. Amazon does carry podcasts now. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, Spotify, Radio Public. I'm probably missing a few there. Elliott, I'm not gonna have you run through it because none of us memorize this like Pete has. You can check us out at teamarivalspodcast.com. You can email us, but nobody ever does. The show at Team Arrivals Podcast. And where else? We got a YouTube, right? We got a YouTube account.
You can find me on Twitter at @TOR_Elliott. It's a lot of nerdy video game and baseball stuff. That's typically what you're going to find me tweeting about.
You can check us out on Twitter at Team Arrivals Pod. You can go to Facebook. If you're not watching us on Facebook right now, if you're watching on some other platform, you can find us on Facebook at Team Arrivals Podcast. And you can find us on Instagram at Team Arrivals Podcast as well.
You can find Ron
at TOR_Ron75. We do this live every Thursday at 9 p.m. Central Time. You can find us on Periscope, YouTube, Facebook, all three. We do it at the same time. You won't miss a thing. Eventually, we keep declaring this. Someday, you'll not find us on Facebook anymore. We are going to focus on the other platforms, which we think are a little bit stronger runway ahead. So we'll focus on those platforms. Hell, who knows? We might get crazy and go on Twitch too. I don't know who uses Twitch. I certainly can't relate to them. That's why we have to bring in guys like you that understand that stuff better than me. So we'll be hanging out there someday as well. But until then, we love you all so much. Hopefully we have Pete back next week. We can do a full show, and we can recap what we saw in episode 1, season 2 of The Mandalorian. I'm looking forward to that. Can't wait to get up tomorrow morning. Might not be able to go to sleep tonight. But until then, we love you all so much. Talk to you soon, everyone. Bye-bye.